So you can stop it though, is the point, because you don't have to go there. Even if like, okay, let's say it's true. Let's say for example, I sang Così fan tutte in 2014 when I was pregnant with twins. And I was like a sweaty pregnant mess. Like I was sweaty and like fatter than normal even, and I'm not thin. And like someone wrote about it in the newspaper. They said frumpy and irritating.
Oh my gosh.
And they said I had no sex appeal. And I was like, oh wow, that is, when I read that, I was like destroyed. I was like, what? I'm never gonna show my face again. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not doing this. I can't be subject to that kind of. And I had all these hilarious impulses. I was like, I'm finding pictures of the guy who wrote it, and I'm like, dude, so mute is the feeling, because you're repulsive too, and not with 100,000 condoms would I sleep with you. You know what I mean? Like, just like, I mean, who do you think you are writing about me in a newspaper that you're not interested in sleeping with me? Oh, okay, cool, because I wasn't offering. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
But then also the fact, it was so startling and difficult to read. But I thought it all the time. And then I started telling myself, like, oh, any success is in spite of you, not because of you. I mean, it's a mess. And so I realized this is unhelpful. I'm not doing this. I'm focusing somewhere else. Instead of letting that, like, those words, frumpy and irritating and no sex appeal, reverberate in my skull, I'm going to say what it is that I want to promote in this performance. So when I'm in that, like, shame spiral, vulnerability nightmare right before performing, because I'm someone who suffers, I'm sure it's normal, but I suffer from performance anxiety. And so when I'm in those moments, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have had enough experience to notice my pattern, which is this, that like a few days before it starts, and I just start, like, I guess I become more difficult to deal with. Like, my loved ones are suddenly like, ew, I don't like being around you. And then it's a few days before, maybe even a whole week before, and then it calms, and then it comes back like a couple days before. I'm like, why is it so hot in here? Like, I just become slightly difficult. It's just super funny. I mean, this is my life, my whole life. And I remember my poor parents, like, driving me to a choir concert in high school, and just, I was like, you know, really complaining and unhappy, and they were like, gosh, you're so difficult. Why are you so difficult? And my mom was like, don't be such a diva. I remember my mom saying, don't be a diva. But it was all this, like, absolute abject terror of having to perform and wishing so bad, but also this, like, weird need to do it. You know, why was I born with both? Why was I born with both? It's so messed up. But so I have to talk myself into it. But now I know, like, when I start to get those, like, gnawing self-doubt feeling, the performance anxiety, when it comes, I just start going, no, let's focus on what you want to accomplish. And I say, and I try to keep it really simple, because I'm basically, I believe that I'm just communicating with my, like, animal brain. Do you know what I mean? Like, the sub brain, the amygdala or whatever. I'm going, you're freaking out because you can't tell the difference between being chased by a cheetah that's going to eat you and, like, having to perform in front of your grandparents or whatever. And I'm going to tell you, we're not going there. There is no cheetah. What's happening is I'm going to breathe deeply, and I'm going to think about what I want to do, what I want to be. And so I say, for example, let's come up with something. What did I say when I was Violetta? Violetta was hard for me because I had been told that I shouldn't do it or couldn't do it, and I really wanted to. So when it was offered, and then also, like, you have no sex appeal, but try to sing Violetta, who's supposed to be, like, the super sexy woman. So I was like, oh, I'm faking it. But then, you know, in the heat of the moment, when I'm in the shame spiral, I go, nope. Okay, I'm breathing deeply, and I'm like, beautiful, vulnerable, you know, like, ooh, what else is she? Honest. You know, I'm thinking about the character. And I came up with 3 or 4 positive words that I just repeat, and I just think about those characteristics. Now, I'm not someone who has had a lot of acting training, although I love inhibiting another character, and I love telling stories very, very much. But I'm sure of the acting training that I've had, they mostly are like, don't talk about, I don't know, there's, like, a wrong way to do it and a right way, right? Like, you're not supposed to, when you talk about a motivation, it's supposed to be as simple as possible. I don't know that describing someone with an adjective is the best way, but this really helps me personally. So when I'm like, what is this character? And I just say the words over and over, and I find that it calms the shame spiral. It directs my thoughts in the direction I want them to go, rather than toward the, like, you should quit, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And anyway, I love it. And I love how many, like hundreds of singers come to me on Instagram and say, I did it. It worked. You know, I was in an audition setting, which is so demoralizing, dehumanizing even, you know, and you're in line with 400 other girls wearing the same dress and they're all singing the same song as you, and you or like you're worse than them. That was always what I felt like. Oh, I'm you know, why am I even here? Whatever. My shirt is from Walmart. I remember one day I was wearing a Walmart shirt at an audition because like no money, and I was like, I bought this at Walmart and I'm auditioning for this fancy opera company, and like if they knew my shirt was from Walmart and I got these earrings in a convenience store, like I'm such a fraud, you know, all that. So in those environments that are set up to make you feel like you shouldn't do it, you have to quiet the gnawing, horrible, soul-destructing voice. So that's where the adjectives come. And I really recommend this to anyone. I think it's not even just about being a singer. I think it's about any moment in your life when you're experiencing this hardship and it's like, seriously, when you get down on yourself, you should just repeat, like, what is it that you want? Think about that instead. You know what I mean? As hard as you can, just think about that instead. Breathe deep and think about what you want. It's like the most basic, I mean, breathing deeply is the most basic form of meditation. And I think if you redirect your thoughts, that's another, it's extremely basic meditation. Some people are super good at this. It's a muscle you probably have to practice and try. But I know from my personal life, I've been able to accomplish much more in circumstances when I wanted to quit than when I didn't do this.
Sure.
That's so long. I'm sorry. Blah, blah, blah.
No, it answered like 6 of our questions. And I actually, like, I kept like thinking of a question and then you went into it and I was like, oh, perfect.
I read your mind.
Right. You did, right? Do you have any advice for working with so many different people that are telling you what you need to fix? You know, working with a coach and a director.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so okay, it's just like growing up. You know how there's like an awkward phase before you come into your own or whatever? When you're a young singer, you have an awkward phase before you have created your circle. But you need to curate a circle of trusted advisors that is real small. Okay. Let's say like maybe a parent is invited to be on this, ultimately a manager. If you are lucky, you will have a manager who can be in this, maybe a partner or like a really good friend, you know, that knows about your voice and knows about singing, knows about a teacher would be nice to put in there. Get a small circle of people that you like, you know, that even if they say something unpleasant, you have to listen to it. And then like that you can trust them for sure. Also make sure that there are people in this circle that you know will love you even if you suck. Like, so that their advice doesn't make your sense of yourself compromised to the point of misery. Like, if your mom, for example, like knows how well you sing, you know what I mean? And she knows like, wow, that wasn't your best performance, but it's your mom. Like she's going to love you even if you tanked or whatever. That's important. So when you're a young artist, there's a lot of people who surround you who are like, oh, you're the talent. Like, ooh, how can we, whatever, what do we do for you? But then that means that your value as a person is completely based on how you're singing. So it's not really healthy to invest a ton in those sort of relationships because they're super conditional upon your success as a singer. And what say you get like really bad reflux or like you have, heaven help us, like some sort of polyp or something. I mean, like you can't, or you get in a car accident, the steering wheel goes through your throat. Okay, so the point is you got to put someone in your circle that is going to love you come what may. And that's part of why you know you can trust the feedback, because you know that it's not coming from a place of bitterness or jealousy or anything like that. But once you've curated this very small group, I wonder if you could even, like, I didn't ever do this, but write down the names. Like, this is the circle of trust.
Right.
And then maybe this is smart. If you write down their names, then you know anybody outside of that circle, you can evaluate what they're saying, but you do not let yourself take it all the way to heart without evaluating it and bringing it by the circle. Wrap yourself in a blanket of protection from all of the feedback that's coming in. Don't show them on the outside that you're protected from their feedback, because that will make them push harder and try to hurt you more to get it in. You can be like, thank you, that's very interesting, but you don't have to listen.
Right.
You don't have to listen. Also, always consider the motive of the person offering the advice.
Wow.
Always consider, and no, this is something that I really believe. People are always talking about themselves, okay? If someone comes up to you and says, I didn't like that you sang the high note flat, they're only talking about their own perception. So all obviously that you can hear is you sang the high note flat. And you're like, oh my gosh, I sang flat. Oh my gosh, Hari Kuri, right? It's over. Whatever. But who are they? Could they do it better? Look at the circumstances. Maybe you did sing it flat. And then ultimately you have to go, okay, how can I do it with better intonation next time? But you need to separate your value as a human person from your singing, which is very hard to do. Yes. But I feel like if you wrap yourself in this like theoretical blanket that protects you from the barbs that are coming in. I mean, I remember somebody one time coming up to me and saying, I won a competition. It was very early on, but I felt awkward bowing. I hadn't given a lot of thought to like how to bow. And I just bowed sort of like a man, I guess. And the guy was like, it's sad how a really great performance can be destroyed by a really unseemly bow. And I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh, I'm a buffoon, you know? And then I thought about it too much. And then I practiced my bows. So in a way, like, thank you, horrible, grouchy, up yourself man who was trying so hard to prove you're better than me. Because now I bow in a way that I feel very proud of my bow. Yes. I thank you very much. I practiced it up. I worked on my glutes and my quadriceps till I can successfully slowly descend into it, you know. But it's funny. You just got to consider the source. Consider where they're coming from. Why are they offering me this advice? And then once you have your people that you trust, this is another rule of thumb that I've learned from Bren Jovanovic, who's a brilliant tenor and like a really, really good person, like a really lovely person, which is awesome. He says, if you get the same feedback 3 times, you should really consider it. But I love that because that also means if you get a feedback 1 time, you don't really have to take it that seriously.
Yeah.
It might just be like one person's opinion. But once you've heard it 3 times, it's like, okay. maybe there's something to this. The point is, that is, by the way, absolutely not what I ever did as a young artist. I'm the kind of person that was like, you give me one, like, say, do this 1 inch, and I'm like 6 meters, right? Like I'm like 20 feet. I'll go all the way. And I was like this weird pendulum, like so desperate to please that being told we want it really quiet, I'd be like, okay, cool. I'll go completely off the voice, open the chords and blow air through. What do you think? Perfect. Right? Like, you know what I mean? And it's so stupid because they just wanted it like that much. Sure. And I don't know. I couldn't figure out how to, it's because, so also in the meantime, while you're like evaluating the motive of the other person, evaluate your own motive. What is your motive in receiving criticism?
Oh.
Are you so desperate to please other people that you will sacrifice your gift? Because I've been there. I've been there in an effort to get the validation, which, like I said, in the long term, I realized I owed only to myself from myself. I was willing to compromise my technique. Like, if a conductor is like, I really want this to go so fast and with better diction until you're bleeding out the mouth, I'd be like, sure, cool, I'll do it, you know? Right. And now I'm like, wait, no, sorry, nope, you know? And the truth is, whatever you can do to be true to yourself is what you should be doing. Anyway.
You have to find that happy, I feel like I'm at a point in my career where I have to find the happy medium between pleasing people because I'm not getting all sorts of gigs and with being true to myself. And I find that really difficult to do.
Well, I'm telling you, this is another way of saying it. When you're evaluating someone's motive, it's not going to be pure in any one way. Like, there might be a kernel of it that's worth taking. You don't have to take it 100%. You don't have to take all of it to heart. But, like, what are they doing? You know, because also the other thing is, in a room where people are preparing an opera or a concert or whatever, usually there's like, I like to think of them as the clipboard people. It's like a panel with, you know, you got the director, the assistant director, stage manager, assistant stage manager, the diction coach, the pianist, the conductor, the assistant conductor, and the second assistant conductor, the costume people, the blah, 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 blah. You have like 1,000 people in this room. None of them are singing. You're singing. They all are representing one wedge of a pie. Okay, let's say the conductor is like, or let's see, I don't know, the pianists are responsible for pitches and rhythms, and the conductor is responsible for dynamics and like artistic, let's say, I don't want to say homogeneity, like a streamlined artistic construct.
Sure.
And the diction coach is responsible just for the diction, you know. Somebody's responsible for what you look like. It's this pie. Everybody thinks their wedge is the whole stupid pie.
Sure, yeah.
But you have to do all the wedges, right?
Right.
So, like, you're getting these people that are like, oh, but the diction is the only point of this. And the conductor's like, no, but my part is the only point. And my part is the only point. And you start getting like, I'm a bit overwhelmed, you know? But if you think about, like, in terms of your own personal pie, like, what do you value the most? But still, you have to be responsible for the whole pie. Maybe you can realize, yeah, you know, my diction wedge of my pie is a little narrow because I've invested more energy in like my personal charm, let's say, or whatever. Because all of it, you have to do the whole pie.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, this might be an interesting exercise to literally write it down.
Yeah.
Like, what are the things that are required to be successful at this job? Because you have to have good diction. You have to have correct pitches and rhythms. You have to be able to do dynamics. You have to be charming. So you have to have charisma. You have to have an ability to tell a story. You have to have all these things. But you got to realize, like, and look, some people, their acting wedge is like real narrow and their singing wedge is like real wide, right?
Yeah.
And nobody's going to be like perfectly balanced. But the point is you have to do the whole pie. And the bigger the pie, the better. Right? Who doesn't want a big old pie?
Yes.
Anyway, those people in the room, all the feedback that you're getting is going to be like really one-sided. That's what I'm trying to say. Because you're ultimately responsible for so much more than just their one element.
Yes.
But they are getting their whole sense of their value in the room from that one thing.
Right.
So some of them will really lean in. Will really tell you, like, you suck really bad and I'm going to be the one to make you right because then I can take credit for your work. And but you're the one naked on the stage at the end.
Yes.
Hopefully not literally. You know what I mean? Sorry. No shade. If somebody wants to do that, that's their deal. I personally am not comfortable with that. I personally feel like you don't have to go to college for that. And I've been to college, so I feel I don't have to do that. It's just my own thinking on the subject.
I love it.
Yes.
So every singer's told that they're not enough. We all have a weakness. We're all, everyone's telling us we're wrong about something. We've got to fix something, and maybe we are. We're wondering what's that one thing for you and where you're at on your journey. Is it something that you have dealt with? Is it something you're dealing with it? Or is it something that you have put on the back burner and you are working on other more important things?
Oh gosh, that's a horrible question, Evan.
I know, it is horrible. And we ask everyone.
I read it, but I didn't realize that that's what you meant. Oh, okay. What is my... No, I don't know because, okay, how do I put this? I used to have a really breathy voice. Like, I had problems with cord closure.
Okay.
So I
don't believe that, but...
It is. I could scrape up an old recording for you if you like. But I had to really, like, when I started taking lessons from Daryl Babbage, who, by the way, is amazing. I don't know if you should have him on your podcast.
I have studied with him, and he is
you just
amazing.
Love him?
Yes.
And he's such a great person, too.
Amazing.
Oh, Jazzo.
Yes.
Love him. So my first semester with him at BYU, he had me go, like, at the beginning of every phrase to, like, really force the chords closed. Mm-hmm. I remember singing Ain't It a Pretty Night. It's like, ain't it a pretty night? But it helped me because otherwise I was like, ain't it a pretty... I don't know. I had weird breathy, but it wasn't from lack of pushing because trust me, I was pushing. Anyway, that was hard. I had a hard time with resonance, but it's just, I don't know the thing that I probably hyper focus on now is just like my appearance. But that's the thing that and because of the coronavirus and like all this, because I was on this weight loss journey, I lost a ton of weight. I went way too far. I was only eating 800 calories a day. And I got to the point where I couldn't I had no stamina vocally.
Oh my gosh.
And I couldn't bloom in the top. I was like, my high notes were really anemic. I could float like easy peas. I was like, oh, listen to me. Look at me, La Flotina. I always wanted to be able to do that.
Right.
All it took was like a little bit of starvation, my hair falling out, and I was floating like crazy. But I couldn't do the power in the top. I couldn't sing with a lot of power. And I was like doing all these things to compensate. And anyway, I realized like I also wasn't eating carbs. That was part of the problem. And I don't know, I haven't really tried it where I'm eating no carbs, but on a performance day, I'm eating like tons of calories. I don't know if that would be enough, because also I feel like when I was losing weight, I was in this, I got in a ketogenic state, right? Where I was sort of, it makes you kind of like zen, which it was good in a lot of ways, but I lacked the edge. I didn't have like this energetic, like
interesting
shimmer on the, I was just sort of subdued. Like a subdued version of myself, a little bit slower and softer. So I don't know, because I turn out, that's not my inherent personality. Like maybe, even if it's negative, I guess, I'm kind of intense. And so I sort of want to, I want to be able to call upon that intensity when necessary in a character. So I started eating carbs again. I gained back some of the weight, but I feel like now, I mean, I could probably give or take like another 10 or 20 pounds or whatever, but I looked way better when I couldn't sing, but like I couldn't sing, you know what I mean? What, is it worth it? Ultimately, I don't think so. I think I'd rather so, but it's the kind of thing. I mean, I just sang Mimi, and Mimi is supposed to die of tuberculosis, which is like makes you become skeletal before death. So like that's not in the cards, because guys, I don't know if you know this, but like I don't actually have tuberculosis. It was acting. I know, right? Surprise, surprise, world! I'm just pretending. Let's put some gray eyeshadow under my eyes. That's how we dealt with that problem. But anyway, unfortunately, I was directed, and I went like a lamb to the slaughter to a page of like people live tweeting while listening to the broadcast. And some of the comments were only about how I looked way too healthy. Luckily, no one used the word fat, but people were like, she could beat up all the men, you know, and I am big. I don't know. Like, I am not a frail woman. I'm like healthy. My metrics are good or whatever, but like, I'm not a frail woman. Sorry. And maybe my Mimi didn't die of tuberculosis. Maybe she died of something, whatever, that you can die of while being on the chubby side. Whatever, I don't know. But the point is, like, that is my big issue. That is my thing that, like, holds me back, that I have to, like, fight the demons over, is, like, my self-consciousness about my appearance. But I also acknowledge that it's so stupid, because when I remember, who was I talking to about this? I just came to this conclusion that if there is a group of people in the world saying, you know, I would go to the opera, but I don't want to have to look at fat people. If there is someone actually saying that, first of all, what an a-hole, and why are we catering the whole profession to that sick, stupid person?
Yes.
But I don't even know that anyone is saying that. Like, are there people?
Does someone exist like that?
Yeah, I think that some, now that I know more of them, I think that some casting directors are a bit like that. Which I'm like, cool, you've chosen the wrong genre. Like, pick a different field. You know what I mean? And of course we all want, I mean, it's like, we all wish we looked like the ideal version of ourselves, whatever. But it's just such a ridiculous standard, especially if what you're asking for is not, this isn't modeling. You know what I mean? It's not like the sole purpose of a person is their appearance, particularly if they are a singer. So it's a complex thing. But also, are we claiming by only casting thin people in opera, or generally, are we claiming that only thin people deserve to have their stories told? Only thin people fall in love? Like, only thin people are worthy? Like, it's such a sickness. It's such a societal sickness, and I don't agree with it at all. I don't think that it's fair to underrepresent what is basically average and normal, because we're so obsessed with some ideal. Because ultimately, like, it can be very healing to watch a story on the stage and really relate to it, rather than thinking like this is some sort of unattainable ideal. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But also, I mean, we like pretty things. We like looking at beautiful people. That's why, I mean, whatever. Every story has a lot of sides, and I'm super digressing on this point, but I guess this is just the issue because I feel like it's so vulnerable.
Yes.
For anyone. Yeah. Like you can I remember a conductor saying to me, I feel sorry for you because you're so good that you're never going to be good enough. And I was like, what does that mean? And he said that, Norma Jean, what's her name? Her famous name? Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was like really criticized humously. Before she died, she was like, you know, she was so beautiful that it was like, well, you know, she could lose weight, or she could. And this is how sick we are in society. It's like once something is so good, the expectation overcomes. Yeah. And it is my opinion that perfectionism is potentially the death of art. So, but we do this, the greater something is, then the hype can possibly overcome the greatness. And then you can never live up to the idea. You know, like Maria Callas said, she was like, Callas was like a separate creature from her own self, and like what she had to do to maintain it, and what she had to sacrifice, but it was never real. It was all like, anyway, it's just, I don't know. What is the thing that I'm working on? I guess, what am I doing to work on it, or is it on the back burner? Back to your question. I think that I, like everyone, am like, how do I, look better, and but I also sort of resent it. Yes. And I remember when I was like last summer, I was singing Rusalka in 2019, not last summer, I guess 2 summers ago. And, or whatever you call it, 2019 relative to now. And I was like really watching what I was eating and like trying to be thin or whatever. And I, trying to maintain the weight loss that I had done, but also like trying not to be so low that I couldn't bloom in the top anymore, particularly for that role. And, I just remember being at dinner with some friends and looking at them and saying, wouldn't it be awesome to just be okay with yourself?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be amazing to just be okay? Like, to just not have to stomach this constant self-doubt. Like, what would it even be like? What would it be like to just freaking be okay? And I was like, I'm going to try that out for a while. I'm going to see what that's like.
Good for you.
And, I mean, but it's like, look, but then, of course, it's a house of cards, because the minute I'm reading, she's too big, shouldn't be singing me, I'm like crumpled and thinking, okay, I'm off carbs again. Like, it's, and that's maybe the price you have to pay to be a sort of a public person. Like, if you put yourself if you put yourself basically on a platter to be consumed, then does the public own your image? Are they allowed to make these sort of comments? And I guess that's like the debate of time. Like, that'll never stop going on. And ultimately, maybe that's the point, that like the you that you really are, which is ultimately what ideally comes across in your artistry, like finding the balance between giving that to people while you're performing and saving it for yourself when you're not, so you don't have to endure those kinds of like cruel comments made by the peanut gallery. Anyway, that is my non-answer to your question. Don't worry though, it took up a lot of time.
Yes, it's perfect.
No, I mean, I told you we were going to edit a bunch, but I don't think we can edit one word of what you've said today.
I know.
Oh gosh, Liv will be so unhappy. Oh, I'm glad. Liv is always like, don't say those things, Rachel. Don't do it. But I can't help it.
Yeah.
She also says, usually when there's an interview and I answer all the questions, she's like, Rachel, you're not talking to the police. So I try to take it really seriously. Like, I want to answer all the questions.
Yeah. I love that.
Anyway, you guys are not the police. But if you have any other questions or whatever, I'm happy to.
I have a fun question for you. What is your dream role, or what is your favorite role that you've ever done?
Ooh, okay. So I loved singing Rusalka. I loved it so much. I didn't expect to love it that much, but
wow.
It's weird because she's not a human, but I really somehow felt for this. I felt like this character. I felt like, also I think because as a mom of little kids, there's this, in Act 2, you don't say anything for most of it. And there's this scene, it's such a great production, this David McVicker production I did in San Francisco, was just so magical. And there's a part where she like realizes that, so she's